Hello everyone. In today's video, I'm going to answer the question I get asked by far the most about learning Finnish. Is Finnish really as hard as people say it is? And what I found in my Finnish journey up to A2 level is the things people say are difficult about Finnish really aren't difficult at all. And I hit a lot of personal walls that weren't mentioned anywhere on the internet in the beginning of my Finnish journey. So at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you the 3 things that I found the most difficult about Finnish that really isn't talked about enough. So I'm going to ask you, if I told you that Finnish was very easy, or if I told you that Finnish was very hard, how much would that influence your decision to learn the language? Because of course, we live in a society of money and career, and that results in rational thinking. And rational thinking is breaking things down into pros and cons list. What's good for my career? How useful is this language? Will I have the opportunity to immigrate to Finland? And when you rationalize things, you're not thinking with your subconscious. You're thinking with your rational mind. And your rational mind has a tendency to deceive you. Like, think about any option you have in life. Maybe you have 3 different options, or there's a fork in the road. You can make a compelling case for each option, thinking with your rational mind. But in hindsight, you know what your subconscious wanted, and sometimes that seed gets planted 2 years before your conscious mind knows what you actually want. So if you're thinking about Finnish from the perspective of how hard or how easy will this language be to learn, you're not thinking with your subconscious. You're thinking with your rational mind. So what you really want to do is spend a few hours, spend a couple of weeks, how long it takes to decide, is Finnish really for me? How badly do I want this? Now I'm going to talk about the things that everyone says is difficult about Finnish, but they're really not that difficult at all. So the first one is the 15 grammatical cases. Now, every noun has up to 15 different grammatical cases, and this does make the words really hard to recognize in context because they can take many different forms. For example, talo is the word for house, but if you want to say in the house, you say talo sa. So there's no word for in. The actual word changes. And this potentially makes it difficult to recognize words in context. So if you're taking the grammatical textbook classroom approach to learn Finnish, this is going to be a very difficult obstacle. Now, with my learning style, if I had taken the textbook grammatical approach, I would have quit Finnish a long time ago. I just don't have the attention span to sit in a textbook and learn the ins and outs of the grammatical rules. Thankfully, I discovered learning through immersion, where I'm essentially watching TV shows with subtitles, listening to audiobooks comparatively with the English version. So I'm essentially reading subtitles while listening to audiobooks. And as I get better and better, I'm slowly turning the subtitles off. Right now, I'm listening to Finnish with subtitles about 50% of the time. And this trains your brain to recognize all the different grammatical forms and context. So I never have to study grammar even once. And people might think that, well, grammar is intrinsic to the language. It really isn't. Grammar actually doesn't exist at all. So when you say it's very important to study Finnish grammar, what you're really saying is it's very important to study the rationalization of the language. So we make up these rules for how the language is supposed to work, when in reality, the language evolved like this over time. So you really don't have to study grammar at all. You can learn Finnish 100% through immersion, and your brain will intuit the rules through passively absorbing the language. The next thing that people say is very difficult about Finnish is Finns speaking English when you try to speak Finnish. So what happens is immigrants, they go into bars and restaurants and they try to order in Finnish, and the Finns, being very obliging people and they speak perfect English, they will just switch to English because they think that they're making your life easier, and it's more inconvenient for you to both communicate in Finnish when your Finnish isn't very good. So if you want to get Finnish conversational practice, you have to arrange it in a very purposeful way, because Finns know English so well, it's not going to be an even exchange. And I was able to do this through Italki. Right now there's about 30 tutors on there. You can try out different ones. The rates range from probably $25 an hour up to $40 an hour. And this is really great because with a business relationship, it's established that you're there to speak Finnish. And there's no question about the person reverting to English because you're there specifically to learn Finnish. Another thing I did was I posted in these Finnish expat groups on Facebook. So when Finns emigrate to the United States, they want to connect with their own people. So they set up these Facebook groups, and there'll be Finns in New York, Finns in Portland, Finns in Los Angeles. So you might search New Yorkissa, which is in New York, or Los Angelesa, which is in Los Angeles. If you forget that, just type in Los Angeles or in New York, and then search that in Facebook, and then you'll see these expat groups. So I did that for Portland, and by doing that, I found a local conversation group that met once a month and spoke Finnish. And that was really good for keeping me on track, because when you have like-minded people who want to learn the language and are interested in Finnish culture, that really keeps you accountable and on track to keep learning the language. Another thing that people cite about Finnish being difficult that really isn't that difficult is Finnish is a Uralic language. So it's in a different family than all the Indo-European languages, like the Romance languages and the Germanic languages. So French, Spanish, German, Danish, Swedish, they're all in the same language family as English. So in theory, it's easier to learn those languages than it is to learn Finnish, which came from a completely different language family. And that philosophy only really counts at the beginning when you're associating new terms with English terms and how close they are together. But at the intermediate to advanced level, it doesn't matter at all, right? Because now you have a strong foundation for the language. You're in that ecosystem. You know the rules. Your brain has already made a model. So it really doesn't matter anymore. So the part where a language is in a completely different family only matters at the absolute beginner level. And when you're an absolute beginner, you have a very high enthusiasm for the language, so you're going to burn through that difficulty very quickly. So don't be discouraged that Finnish is a completely different language family. It's not a valid reason to make a decision not to learn a language. Now I'm going to talk about the things that were surprisingly easy about Finnish. So first, everything in Finnish is spelled exactly how it sounds, with almost no exceptions. And this helps you out so much because I don't have to read Finnish. I can just listen to Finnish audiobooks and I know exactly how to spell the word. Even when I'm watching fast-spoken Finnish between multiple speakers where they're all interrupting each other, if I hear a new word that I've heard a lot and don't know yet, I can just type it into Google Translate, and maybe I'll be a few characters off, but I'll know that word, and I don't have to spend so much time trying to figure out what that word is. So it's very logical in that manner. And I can also skip reading text. I can listen to Finnish while driving, while going on errands, while on my morning commute, and I don't have to read it to learn how to pronounce it. It's just very intuitive that way. The second thing that makes learning Finnish very easy is Finns generally tend to be very patient and encouraging people. They're not going to correct you on every single little mistake you make. And people have different philosophies about whether teachers are supposed to correct you on all your mistakes. And in my experience, as long as you're improving greatly from week to week, there's really no need to correct the person on every single little grammatical mistake they make. Because as long as you're improving, mistakes are actually part of your brain's rewiring process. Another thing that makes Finnish very easy to learn is, for its size, it has a huge cultural export. So you're going to find TV shows, audiobooks, podcasts, YouTubers, documentaries. It's going to be very easy for you to find something in Finnish and watch it. And you're going to find something very easy that's engaging to you. There's a lot of Finnish YouTubers. YouTube is probably one of the best resources. Yle is another great resource. You're going to need a VPN to watch it if you're outside of Finland. The next thing that makes Finnish very easy is compound words. So once you get a baseline for the vocabulary at the beginning, it gets a lot easier to build new vocabulary because of compound words. Like, for example, fridge is jääkaappi, which means ice closet. So if you know the word for ice and closet, you already know the word for fridge. And another example. So to agree is samaa mieltä, which means same minds. And disagree is eri mieltä, different minds. So Finnish compound words and more advanced vocabulary tends to use the root forms of other words. So it actually makes it very easy to acquire new vocabulary later on. Now for the part of the video you've been waiting for all along, the things about Finnish that I found to be the most difficult in my language journey that aren't talked about enough in the Finnish language learning community. So the first thing I found to be very difficult is accessing the spoken language. And I'm only telling you this because I finally figured it out. So if you're watching this, you'll know how to solve this problem. But it took me a full year to figure out how to solve this problem. So as you probably know, Finland has a written language and a spoken language. And the reason why the written language and the spoken language are separate is because Finland has a lot of different regional dialects. So the written standard is sort of a compromise between all the different regional dialects. And you'll see this written standard a lot in the news. Almost all the audiobooks are in the written standard. So you might think it's easy to access the spoken language because of TV shows. And I thought this for a whole year, watching TV shows, thinking I was accessing the spoken language. But it's not quite true because TV shows are not an accurate representation in any language of how people speak in real life. If you really think about it, TV shows, they're scripted, and no one typically talks over each other. So everyone is saying their line, which was written by a writer. They didn't come up with their line naturally in context. It was written by someone else, and now they're saying their line. And then once they're finished speaking, it goes to another speaker. So this is almost too easy, right? That you're listening to lines in kind of a rehearsed artificial way, even if they're speaking colloquial Finnish. But it's line by line. So the way to get authentic spoken Finnish is through reality shows. And there's quite a few reality shows on Yle. Right now I'm watching Au Pairit, which is very good. I'm watching another show called Sadan Vuoden talo, about this guy who's trying to build a house that's going to last 100 years. And what you can do is, if you're using Google Chrome and you're using a VPN to access Yle, what you can do is you can get the subtitles in English by right-clicking on the screen once you're in the video and press Translate to English. So there's no English subtitles available, but just with a few clicks of a mouse, you can translate the subtitles to English. So once I started watching reality shows instead of regular TV shows, within a month I was able to understand all the YouTubers without subtitles. So that was a huge improvement, and it took me a full year to figure it out. Watch reality shows versus regular TV shows. The second thing I found to be difficult about learning Finnish, and what a lot of people might find to be difficult, is it does get expensive to get quality speaking time with feedback. And I'm only telling you this because there is a way out of this. You don't have to pay for lessons all the time. For example, I figured out a way to only get lessons once a month versus twice a week, which I was originally. And the way to do this is to talk to yourself. So when I'm doing my daily activities, I started talking to myself in Finnish, and this translated my internal monologue from English to Finnish. And once I started describing my daily activities to myself in Finnish, I started improving my speaking without actually taking speaking lessons. Describe the view out your window, describe your feelings about the day, describe your plans for the day, describe the things while you're doing it, while you're cooking, describe your process, and this will activate the speaking part of your brain, because speaking the language activates a different part of your brain than listening. So you can actually get really good at listening the language, but you'll be terrible at speaking the language if you don't practice it. My listening is probably very close to B1, while my speaking is at best A2. So because I've listened to so much Finnish, my understanding has far eclipsed my speaking. Now, this last thing that I found to be difficult at Finnish really only applies when you get beyond A2 level. And that's continuously finding resources that are engaging to you. Now, at the beginning, there's a ton of YouTubers, a ton of new channels, and it's best to go intensive. So when you binge watch a new season of TV, you want to repeat that season to drill in that vocabulary into your brain. But as you get beyond A2, you want to switch from going intensive to extensive. So you want to see new vocabulary in as many different contexts as possible. Because when you keep repeating the same context and the same sentences, your brain becomes untrained to see new words in different contexts. When you switch from intensive to extensive later in your language journey, you start to burn through media very quickly. So when I watch a whole TV show in Finnish, I'm really not watching it again until 6 months later to review it. I want to consume a different TV show to see words in different contexts. So I'll spend a whole hour just watching the beginnings of different Finnish TV shows to see if it's engaging enough for me to watch the whole thing. Because when you're learning something, the number one thing is to stay engaged. Because if you're spacing out even a little bit, you're losing like 20 to 30% efficiency. So I hope this video helps with your decision on whether or not you want to learn Finnish. If you have any interest at all, it's definitely worth trying. It's not going to cause you any harm to put in a week of intensive Finnish learning. Just try watching a Finnish TV show, see if it grabs you, try different audiobooks, and don't let any rationalization stop you from making a decision that can greatly impact your life. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.